Hello, everyone. I'm Vinod, and welcome to Career Bolt. Of late, there's been a lot of discussion about compensation offers for placements at IITs, and something which has stood out is the 4 crore offer offered at IITs, and everybody's talking about it. And I just look at things from both an HR perspective as an ex-HR director and as a current IIT faculty, and I think all this is absolute nonsense. So there's a company called Jane Street, which was supposedly given a 4 crore offer at IITs, and there are so many issues with the numbers being touted, and this goes back to a familiar topic I've talked about in the past in terms of a lot of IITs and a lot of institutes do not do a good job representing the placement information, especially compensation information gets bloated. So that's what we're going to dive in today and discuss in a lot more detail. Okay, let's jump straight into it. Let's look at a couple of things. So what's Jane Street? What are we talking about? So Jane Street is basically a high frequency trading company. It's a finance company based out of New York. And the thing with all these finance companies is that they make the profits by being able to deliver more efficiency in terms of their trading markets. They're able to get data better. They're able to get it to their stakeholders in a much better manner. And that's what they get paid for. And because they're playing with big volumes, they basically take care of assets worth billions, if not hundreds of billions of dollars. So again, they have a lot of advantage and a lot of money to play with. They typically recruit the best from the institutes across the world. And there are companies like Citadel, Jane Street, Renaissance. These are all well known in that space, and they tend to offer very good pay packages. So if you're looking at a typical tech company like the FANG companies like Facebook, Amazon, Google, and so on, you are probably seeing offers at finance companies which is equivalent, if not better, than some of the tech companies. So that's what attracts people to join these companies. So if you look at the latest updates, you see that the trading firm Jane Street has offered a 4 crore package at IITs, and they've recruited students at IIT Kanpur, Bombay, and Delhi. They recruited exactly one student from IIT Kanpur and two students from IIT Delhi and Bombay. And typically, the way these people work is they don't recruit directly from campus. They give an internship. They see how students perform, and then if they do a good job after, say, 6 months, then they get recruited into the company. So that's how these companies work. In terms of what the placement reports don't divulge and what these media reports don't divulge is the fact that a US posting is impossible for these jobs. So a lot of people automatically assume that these jobs are being paid in US dollars and the locations are based out of New York, and that's absolute nonsense. I'll tell you the reasons why. First and foremost, I went and checked the filings, the H-1B filings done by Jane Street last year in 2022. And if you look at the data from 2021 to 22, they just filed for 3 H-1B postings so far. So out of that, 2 of the jobs are not even linked to entry-level roles at an undergrad level. So there's possibly a role of a software engineer where they're recruiting people and the base salary $300,000, just one posting. And it could be anyone. It could be a person with multiple years of work experience. So I just do not know if this role of software engineer was actually targeting fresh undergrads. There's also a recent article in the Times of India, which came yesterday, and it said very, very clearly that the 3.6 crore offers to 3 people have been basically for a Hong Kong posting. So that's what it says. And I was really surprised on reading this because a couple of things stand out. One is that the so-called offer of 4 crores has already dipped to 3.6 crores. There's a variation between what some media has reported versus what others have reported. And Times of India says Delhi, Bombay, Madras, but other media houses say it's Kanpur, Delhi, and Bombay. So there's already a lot of discrepancies out there. Let's dig deeper into the Times of India article. It says that Hong Kong and Singapore seems to be destinations where a lot of the big finance companies seem to be hiring. The quantitative trading company Jane Street has picked up students for the Hong Kong office. So clearly it's Hong Kong, that's what they're saying. And the article also goes on to say that other companies are also giving good offers, but looks like a lot of these folks are being onboarded in their India offices and being asked to come to the US later because of visa problems. So this is something that nobody wants to talk about. It is almost impossible for a student with an undergrad degree to get a H-1B visa to work in the US. It is impossible. After Trump took over, he has tightened the visa rules. And even if you do get sponsored for H-1B visa by the company, there's only a 30% chance of success because the H-1B process is pretty much a lottery. 70% of people who apply for the H-1B lottery get rejected. So even if the company does decide to take you for the New York office and apply for H-1B visa, which is the only way for an undergrad to get to the US, you will get rejected 70% of the time. So you know what the companies do? They basically put you in a different office, like in Europe or in Hong Kong or India for maybe 1 or 2 years, watch you perform, keep applying for H-1B visa till you get it. And then once you get the visa, then they send you over to the New York office. So that's kind of how it works. The chances of getting a visa is only 30%, and a company doesn't live in the realm of possibility. It survives in certainty. And there's no certainty that any undergrad from India can get H-1B visa to be in the US. So it's just impossible. Jane Street recruits for Hong Kong, and I believe that they probably watch you for a couple of years, and you may have a small chance of then getting to the New York office. So there's a reason why these companies have a subsidiary in Hong Kong. It's because they want to keep you in Hong Kong. They want to keep you working there. And in many cases, the cost of living in places like Hong Kong or in India is much, much cheaper than the US. For example, if you are comparing an offer of, say, 1 crore in US to an offer in India, they typically scale it down by a factor of 5. So a 20 lakh offer in India is equivalent to a 1 crore offer in the US because the cost of living in, say, New York is way, way higher. It's 5 times as high as in India. The cost of a haircut could be $30 to $50 in the US. So you get paid not because the company wants to pay you more. You get paid more because the cost of living, the taxes, and so on is more in different countries. So if you're also looking at other data here, it says that in US and Japan, getting visas is almost impossible. There's a link to this article in the description. You should check it out. But again, it's impossible for any IIT student to get to the US directly. That's the way it works. If you have an MS degree, it's very different because then you have different alternate routes for campus recruiting and getting to the US. But you need to get to the US first as a student to actually have a solid chance of applying for H-1B visa to work in the US. There is also one more possibility that you could actually work in a subsidiary for a couple of years. The company is going to watch your performance and then apply for something called L1 visa. It's called an intercompany transfer visa, and that's also a route being used by many companies to send people back to the US. But you have to prove yourself for a couple of years before you get a chance to apply for L1 visa. Let's also look at finance compensation. So we're looking at finance compensation. This is something which again nobody talks about, and I thought it's a great way to talk to students and help you get educated on how finance compensation looks like. So the way compensation works in finance is that you have a fixed base compensation, then you also have a variable compensation, which is a year-end bonus. The year-end bonus is dependent on your individual performance, your business unit's performance, and the company performance. So any one of these three can impact your compensation. So if you have a great individual performance, but you have a very bad company performance, then you may not get your year-end bonus, or it might be much lower than you expected. For example, Jane Street has invested a lot into crypto. In fact, one of the reasons why Jane Street is infamous is because Sam Bankman-Fried, whom I talked about in an earlier video, he was a person who ran FTX, and that went under. Sam's wealth collapsed from around 16 to $20 billion to zero within a week. And I talked about this in a video earlier. Do check it out. But he used to work in Jane Street, and he learned a lot of the techniques around trading from Jane Street. So that's what Jane Street is infamous for, producing scamsters, to be fair. In terms of the compensation at companies, so if the overall rating, which is based on individual performance, business unit performance, and company performance, all put together, if you have a low rating, if you're the 30th percentile, for example, you get paid a much lower bonus. If you're getting paid the 50th percentile, you get a slightly higher bonus. If you're getting paid the 90th percentile, you can have a fantastic bonus. If you're at the 100th percentile, you can get an excellent bonus. So when you're talking about average bonus, it's very difficult because this is going to happen 1 year into the future. Nobody knows what your rating is going to be. So it could be the 28th percentile, it could be the 40th percentile, 60th percentile, 80th percentile, 100th percentile. So a normal thumb rule in most companies is that they assume you are the 50th percentile, and then they give you a number. So typically in any company, this is an example from Quora about a person who graduated uh, uh, from college, has been working in a top quant company and has 5 years of work experience. They're probably gonna get $200,000 plus $100,000 as year-end bonus, so a total compensation of $300,000 at the 50th percentile. So the number for this person, if this person is going to claim his compensation to an external recruiter, this should be that I have an average compensation, total compensation of around $300,000. But the problem is that when it comes to placement offices, they don't understand compensation. None of the professors at IITs understand compensation. None of the students understand compensation. So they just pick up an example of what is the maximum year-end compensation possible. In this case, the example is going to be that the person can probably get a compensation of $1.5 million if this person is the 100th percentile. And then they say that the total compensation is 1.5 million plus $150,000 and say it's $1.65 million. This is absolute nonsense, and that's not the way compensation works. The compensation for this role is probably $300,000. So this is again for a person 5 years of work experience, and you can imagine that for a person with zero work experience who is probably gonna learn his job for the first time in their life, they're gonna learn to work with a team, pick up skills. It's more of an investment in the company on the individual when you finish your undergrad degree. So there's very little value you're going to add to the company. You're going to spend at least a year or two before you begin to add solid value. So there's no reason why companies have to pay you high compensation. It's if a company is doing it, it's out of its mind. It makes zero sense. So companies actually look at entry level hires as the lowest paid employees. And then as you gain skills, then you get paid more because you bring something to the table. And for students doing the undergrad from IITs, I don't care how awesome you are learning skills for the first time in your life, and nobody's going to pay you too much for it. Uh, Again, it's possible that Jane Street pays around $300,000 and I can live with it. But somebody says $500,000, it makes no sense. So I posted one of my answers on Quora on this topic, and there was a lot of people, thousands of people who read the article and gave me comments. One of them said that the compensation at Jane Street was a base of $200,000, $250,000 year-end bonus, and $50,000 of joining bonus. So firstly, when it comes to compensation, joining bonus should not be calculated as part of total compensation. That should really be kept aside. So I'm surprised that people included that in compensation. The second piece is that $250,000 year-end bonus could be possible. But it's probably possible if you're probably at the 75th or the 100th percentile, and that's not probably the 50th percentile information. So the 50th percentile information is typically much lower than your base compensation. So I would assume that the person is getting paid probably 200 plus 100K, which is a total of $300,000 compensation, and not the extravagant numbers being touted. So that's a good way to look at it. Let's look at Jane Street compensation in terms of more data. So there's a person who's basically asked a question, what is compensation Jane Street 5 years work experience? And this person says that typically compensation is around $300,000. For people who are very, very specific roles, they're probably $500,000 to $600,000. And this is, again, $600,000, $700,000 is for people with 5 years of work experience, not for freshers, people with no experience. So somebody claims that they're making $500,000, $600,000 straight out of undergrad, makes zero sense. Let's look at another company called Citadel. This is a company which is a very good competitor to Jane Street. They also end up hiring a lot of IITians. And again, a lot of people with master's degrees do end up joining Citadel. So you can look at Citadel, and people with 0 years of work experience are probably making around $300,000 in New York. Likewise, if they have 1 year of work experience, they're probably making $147,000. Again, it varies a lot, but I would assume that a number between $250,000 to $300,000 is actual compensation. And remember that in a place like New York, cost of living is important. So New York is extremely, extremely expensive, among the most expensive cities in the world. You're probably paying around $5,000 a month for housing. Housing prices in New York have increased dramatically over the past 1.5 years. So houses which were used to pay $3,000, $3,500 as rent, you're probably now paying $5,000, $5,500 a month as rent. So rent is expensive, food is expensive, grocery is expensive, everything is crazy expensive. So $300,000 doesn't mean much. I mean, if you can probably save around 20% of the $300,000 is a big deal in New York. So don't think that these numbers by itself mean much. The actual savings is going to be much, much lesser. It's probably going to be less than, say, 50 lakhs of savings. So that's kind of how these things work. So now let's go back to a larger picture around why do people misreport information? I think the problem with misreporting is that a lot of students who are, for example, school students who are looking at these crazy numbers like 4 crores, 3.6 crores, and all this, they fail to understand that media doesn't understand how to present compensation. Placement officers don't understand how to present compensation. Students have a vested interest in proving that their institute is number one. Like IIT Kanpur wants to prove that they are better than IIT Delhi or IIT Bombay, and Bombay wants to prove that they're better than Delhi and Kanpur. In this stupid war for being number one, misreporting becomes very common. So they basically pull up all these different components of compensation, put it together, and create a bloated pay package. By the way, Jane Street does not pay stock options. So all their pay is in terms of base salary and year-end bonus, and they have a joining bonus, but they do not have stock options, unlike tech companies. So uh, again, you can misreport with respect to the base, not with respect to stock options, but with respect to the year-end compensation you get by misreporting the variable bonus component. And you need to be careful. You need to talk with the 50th percentile number and not talk with the 100th percentile number or a different percentile number. So I wish companies and institutes like the IITs come together, come to some common platform in terms of saying, what does total compensation mean? Is the way IIT Kanpur calculating total compensation the same as how total compensation is reported at IIT Madras or IIT Delhi and so on? Unfortunately, none of the IITs seem to be taking care of this. That's very sad. In fact, none of the IIMs in India take care of this. The only IIM which I've seen has made some progress in terms of reporting exactly what compensation means is IIM Ahmedabad. In fact, there's something called IPRS, placement reports based in IIM Ahmedabad. Just Google search for IPRS, IIM Ahmedabad, and they have a very clearly defined structure in terms of what constitutes total compensation, what constitutes variable compensation, and they have clearly defined criteria, and they try to drive this initiative of standardizing compensation across IIMs to make sure that there is no falsehood being perpetuated. But most of the IIMs are dropped out. Initially, they joined IIM Ahmedabad in doing it, but they all dropped out later for the reasons I talked about. Everybody wants to act as if they're number one, and nobody really wants to say the complete truth. So only IIM Ahmedabad still reports the actual compensation details to this day. There's a wealth of information in the placement reports, and you should check it up. That's available on their website, IPRS IIM Ahmedabad in Google search. And again, it's unfortunate that the placement officers are not cracking down on this. The problem is also that students have a lot of control over placements, and they want to all act as if they are the best IIT out there. And every company knows what's happening within each institute, and they don't need to be misguided. But again, I think the only people who really get fooled are not the companies. The students get fooled a lot, especially students who are in the first year, second year at IITs, and this who look at these numbers and like, oh my gosh, what's happening? I think the biggest casualty is students who are in high school. They look at all these flashy numbers in media and then decide that, hey, I want to join IITs because I want to earn more compensation. I read a report, comment about a person who says that, hey, let me just work for 2 years. I'm probably going to make approximately $1 million within 2 years. And I think that's the best way to do it. And I think that's nonsense, because if you are based in a place like New York, you're making $300,000, it'll take you a very long time, probably 10 years to be anywhere close to saving $1 million, 10, 20 years to get there. So life is not that easy, friend. So it's tough. I've been in the Silicon Valley, and saving money is not that easy when the cost of living is extremely high. So one more question is then, why do these companies have offices in Asia? I think the reason is they want to keep compensation much lower than US. They want to make sure that locations in India, Hong Kong, Singapore, they get great talent, but they don't need to pay so much as in the US to get great talent. So definitely compensation is lower. And let's be very clear. If you're based in Asia, you get paid in Asian currencies, not in US dollars. No fool of a company is ever going to pay US dollars in Hong Kong or in India. That just doesn't make sense. They pay you according to location. So if you're based in Chicago, you get paid much more less than what you get paid in New York. If you're based in Silicon Valley, you're going to be probably going to get paid a little higher than what you're getting paid in New York. That's the way the world works. If you're based in London, you're going to get paid much lesser than what you get paid in, say, Chicago. And that's just the nature of the game. That's how compensation works. That's how HR practices work. So if somebody assumes that they're going to be in India and get paid in US dollars, or be in Hong Kong and get paid in US dollars, you have no idea what is compensation. And you probably need to talk to somebody in HR to understand how compensation works. And companies are no fools. They all want to keep compensation low. Understand that this is the time of a recession. Even having a job is a big deal. So a company like Jane Street can easily go and get lots and lots of people from the open market, people with lots of work experience and who lost their jobs. So they don't need to pay crazy amounts of money to get fresh, unskilled talent straight from the IITs. And the only reason why they still recruit at the IITs is because that's the only place where they can get people to join them at that lower compensation. If they give a high compensation, they can probably get great people even in New York with the green card. So that's how Jane Street and other companies are going to look at it. But I still think at the end of the day, Jane Street is probably still giving a very good offer. So if they're giving an, even if, for example, your pay at the end of the first year is for $200,000 base, you get $50,000 to $100,000 in the year-end bonus compensation. That's still $250,000 to $300,000. It's not bad. It's still a good offer. It's a good way for you to live in New York. In a place like New York, if you're making less than $100,000, you want to starve to death. Basically, it's like an Uber driver would make $100,000 in San Francisco or in New York or in the Silicon Valley. So $250,000 is good comp, but not great or fantastic comp. But Jane Street, I hear it's got an excellent working culture. So again, I just read reviews and I hear that Jane Street is a great company to work for. So as such, if you want to work for a great company, you could work in Jane Street, but don't just look at it in terms of compensation. I think there's a lot more to it which you should look at. Okay, friends, so hopefully this video was helpful to you in terms of understanding how everything comes together, how compensation comes together, how HR practices come together, how people misreport compensation, and how you can be up to date about what's happening. Do let me know if you like this video, and if you've watched this video so far, I would love that you subscribe to the channel by clicking the bell icon below, subscribing, and making sure that you are liking this video. That is the minimum I would expect from you. Let me know if you have other comments, or if not, we'll catch up in the next video. Thanks and bye-bye.